So we discussed, if you remember, last time, probably one of the more difficult subjects to deal with, which is Gilgul Neshamot. Right? Gilgul Neshamot is the reincarnation of the souls.
Don't the righteous come back as fish?
Don't know?
I thought I heard that.
Did you see what we read? He didn't say anything about that.
No, not yet. I don't know.
He didn't say anything about that. So
That's
he
what
just
he
says
said.
that we come back in different forms. Come back. So whether we come back in non-human forms, whether we come back in different ways, inanimate object, all those things are going to remain outside the scope of this class. Should we decide in the future to have a class on what, but it's not really a shame, because let's say you could come back as a chicken, so what?
It'd be interesting as to know why you would come back as a chicken.
Well,
yeah, isn't there reasons for why you
There
would
is
come back
a
to
reason,
specific things?
but he says, so the Ramchal answers that at the end of our chapter.
Oh, okay.
Because he's and essentially, I'll tell it to you outside, we don't have to look at it inside. He says, we don't know how God makes the decisions that he does. We believe that everything that God does is just, and he does it for a reason. Beyond that, it is what it is. So you don't really have to worry, why did I come back as a chicken? Because that's the only thing you could do, right? Sound like a chicken. So it's my chicken sound.
Pretty good. Very good.
How would you come back as an animal if they don't have soul? If they don't have souls,
You do.
They have a nefesh.
so would that mean you didn't perfect your nefesh?
Yeah, you come back. Yeah, or you have to do some sort of a. I don't know. We're not. This is not the class. I don't want to talk about this now. Everybody wants to talk about it, but the easy answer is I don't know anything.
It's not necessarily.
I'm just a chapter ahead of you guys. That's all. I'm a chapter ahead. Don't ask me anything beyond that. Okay. So in the end of chapter, where is it? Chapter 3. We talked about what are the possibilities that can affect human beings. And we know that our birth, we're dealt with a set of cards. There's certain things that we have to deal with because of our parents, certain things we have to deal with because of us, certain things we have to deal with because of previous Gilgulim, as we learned. And all of these sort of come together in a mix that explains the situation in which we're in. Is that simple enough? Any questions on that principle? Good. So now we come to another topic that most people find they would like to argue against and have lots and lots of questions. And this topic has to do with what is the difference in the relationship of God to the Jews and to the rest of the world. Right? Because all we talked about now seems to say what? That this is how he deals with everybody. Because there was no differentiation between a Jew and a non-Jew. The question is, are there differentiations? You say yes. But the question is, what are they? And that's what we have to find out. So he says that from a humanistic level, the Jews and the rest of the world appear to be equal. So if you taking the Torah out, we're not looking at the Torah, there's no difference between us and the Jewish people and non-Jews. We're exactly the same. They eat, we eat, right? They sing, we sing. They have emotions, we have emotions. We cry, they cry. You tickle them, they laugh. Tickle us, we laugh. The whole thing. But he says, mitzad inyanei haTorah. But if you look at human existence, from the way that the Torah presents the issues, Minyanei HaTorah, there's a big difference between us. Big difference. And it appears that we are really two separate species. Okay? It's a big, big difference.
So the Torah is the only, so the humanistic side is the same?
There's a way to look at human beings, not from the Torah perspective, and then there's a way to look at how the Torah is presented. So if you look, without looking in the matters of the Torah, in Yanei Torah, there's no difference between us. We're really the same.
Can you tell us what the Inyanei HaTorah are?
That's the whole point of this chapter. His whole point is the Torah. Yes. So he says we'll explain how they are similar to one another and how they are different. Okay?
So this is how we're similar if we would be the exact same basically if the Torah was never given. There wouldn't be such a thing as a Jew, obviously.
Correct.
But then there's Abraham.
So we'll see. But if we learn that Abraham really was living according to the Torah, right? And so that was the difference between him and all the other people, then we'll see. But he doesn't go that route. He has a different route. Okay? Thank God I read this chapter before. Otherwise, I would be up a creek.
Is that a paddle?
No, paddles, I'm very good paddling. I would never let go of the paddles. You have to stick together here, you know? When you're on a boat, you hold on to the paddles. So, we start with Adam HaRishon. Who was Adam HaRishon?
Adam, first man.
First human being. First human being, correct?
He doesn't have that title after the separation of Chava from him, does he? Or he has the same title, Adam Rishon. Does it matter?
It does matter, but then we would enter a new realm.
There's even last human being as well.
Okay,
As it was originally meant to be.
correct,
Yeah.
right.
Why would he? I don't understand.
He was separated before he had both male.
Well,
Adam
he
was
was
born
created-
male and female,
And
correct?
he was created from his hip bone. Or
From his
something.
side,
Okay.
Tzela.
It's rib.
Yeah, no,
Tell us.
from his side. Tzela means side.
But he was born a man. He didn't have both genitalia.
Really?
I'm asking. You know.
That's what it says that he did.
Okay.
So it says. No, I don't know what it
I
means.
never learned. I mean,
That's what the Torah says. He said male and female. So it seems to be that he had both.
okay.
But maybe not. I don't know. But it sounds like from the pashtus of the psukim. Okay. So before the sin, Adam was on the highest level that any human being could ever be. And that's how he was created. Right? We learned this in the beginning of the book. And he says, that's how humanity started out, being up here. And then what happened? He sinned. And when he sinned, what happened?
Got kicked out of.
Fell down, dropped. Okay? This drop was a serious problem. Okay? So if he stayed at the level that he was and would do the little bit of perfection that he needed, right, he would remain perfected forever. And on that level, he would be able to produce children on that level. So all his descendants would be at his level, much higher, right, than we are. It would be up. Everybody would be up there. There's an idea, actually, interestingly enough, that he would be the father of all the souls that needed to come into being, and there would have to be a set amount. Why?
Because no one died.
Nobody dies. So you'd have to have a set amount that would come into being. Pretty cool.
Why not just him? Why do we need more than one?
What?
What is gain having more than one person?
It's perfection of Adam. He needs to do it.
So why can he have just worked on himself and then
No, but that was the plan. God commanded him, "Pu'uvu," right? Be fruitful and multiply. That is part of the perfection. And when you have children, you realize that they're there to perfect you. They teach you patience. They teach you lots of different, to give unconditionally. At your age, your parents can tell you, listen, I'm done. Take care of yourself. Do your own laundry. I'm done. But you can't say that to a baby, right? Like, listen, I'm tired feeding you. You're up. Here's some peanuts. Here's some popcorn, hot dogs, and grapes. Knock yourself off. Those are all choking hazards. That's why I give those as examples. So, what God really wanted was, or the history of humanity is divided into two periods, says the Ramchal. The periods of the roots and the periods of the branches. The period of the roots, right, which is the foundation, started with Adam and ended with Dor HaFlaga. Dor HaPalga.
So the generation before the flood?
Okay?
Helga, bubble.
No, the split. It's after the flood.
Helga is the split.
After
So
the
the
flood.
first generation to be born.
Right.
Okay.
Right, it's after the flood. So that, he says, up to that, okay, let's get to that section because it's more interesting. So he says, in the beginning, we are dealing with the foundation, the roots. And the root meant, what does a root do? Think about it. What does a root do?
Many things. Attaches the thing that's exposed to the ground and keeps it stable, and it also supplies for life.
Foundation.
What does it do?
It absorbs the nutrients in the water and keeps it alive.
It brings, correct. And by bringing the food, what does it do? It allows for the potentiality of the plant to self-actualize or to actualize. Correct? So the root period, the Shorashim period, was that Hashem set up a time to allow for all of the potentiality of goodness, of perfection, of midos. You pick whatever goodness for that to be actualized in the world. Okay? Once those things are actualized or not actualized, depending on what happens, and we're going to get into it, then there's a set time for that. From let's say year 1 to year 1000, that's the root period. Those are when things are supposed to be actualized. From you get to year 1000, we're done with that. Whatever you've actualized, great. Whatever you haven't, too bad. From that point onwards, we begin building what? Branches. Branches is expanding what already exists. You are not bringing into existence something new. You're just continuing the actuality into new areas. That is the root versus the branch. Two phases in history so far. Roots and branches. Up to the generation after the flood, that was the roots. After that, we begin generations of branches. Okay?
Noah and his family is part of both.
The roots.
They're the roots.
They're still the roots. So he says the following. So, from the beginning of Adam Arishon, Adzman HaPalga, right? We find that there were tzaddikim always teaching the truth to the masses. You have Chanoch, Metushelach, Noach, Shem, Ve'ever, right? Ever that's the cutoff. And they warn their generations, you have to do good, you have to perfect yourself, you have to do all the things that we talk about. But since they didn't, and they essentially filled the bucket of anger of God to the fullest, he said, we are done. Time is up. That is, any potentiality that you didn't actualize yet is done. From this point onwards in human history. Okay? Now, all of that generation, which were the last generation of the roots, whatever level they reached, right? And they certainly were not all at the same level, right? Because you have tzaddikim, you have Shem ve'ever who fulfilled their, were able to actualize a lot more of their potential as opposed to others, right? That essentially sort of froze the further development. This is what it is. And then he says, from that point onwards, he says there are different types of people in the world. That's it. And then from that point onwards, now we begin to push into branches. So what is the main tree of that generation? Avraham. Avraham is no longer the period of a root. He is considered a tree, ilan. And what he does is what? Branch out.
What about the 10 generations between up to until we get to Abraham? What are those people doing?
So Shem ve'ever, ever, and then you have Terach, right? I think because after you have Shem, then you have Ever, then you have Peleg. You have to check the.
I've never heard of a tree growing roots without something called a branch at the same time. They're like not equal. Definitely not equal. The roots are way more numerous, but at the same time you have a sprout, which you could call a branch. So it's hard for me to conceptualize what exactly we're talking about.
Fine.
Can you give us something to quantify or qualify what's being actualized or what's being
Midos.
character traits?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. What you're actualizing, the good ones. You are becoming a better and better person. Because what's the goal? To climb back up to the level of Adam Arishon. He dropped. So God says, okay, now I'm going to give you a period where you can try to actualize all the positive potentiality that you have to grow to a higher and higher level. And since that has a fixed time, and whoever got to whatever level they did, he says, okay, that's it. Now we're done. From this point onwards, whatever you actualize, that's what you keep. Whatever is potential, it's potential, and you lose. It's taken away. Because you're not going to be able to actualize it. And then from now on, now the race started. Now the race out. Right? Up to now, it's up to here. So now you've got, somebody who's got ability to learn that's here. Some people have got ability to learn like this. Somebody who has control of his desires like here. Some is here. All these different levels. And now we're like, okay, that's it. From now on, go. So, and he says the following. At that point onwards, the world was divided into 70 nations. Right? And Avram is one of the 70 nations. At that period you have now a difference between the people of Abraham, right? The Jewish people, and the rest of the world.
It's 10 generations after the flood or right after the flood?
No, it begins with Avraham.
That's when 70 nations were born.
Not from Babel?
No, he says, "Az nitchalek haolam le-70 umot." I don't know why. I mean, in a sense, you're right. We could say that it started with Shem, but it's not exactly with Shem. You have to have a few generations afterwards. You have to start a little bit afterwards, but it's defined as a tree, right, with Avraham, because the Chazal call him Ilan, the tree.
The other nations are not.
Our trees, they're all their own trees, but now each tree is going to create his own branches, and the branches, since the roots are different, the trees are going to be different. And if the trees are going to be different, the relationship between God and the trees are going to be different.
Does that mean
Get it?
there's different trees for different sects of Judaism?
No.
Okay, is it just Judaism as a whole?
He's not talking about Judaism, he's just talking about Jews.
Right.
Judaism is we're not there yet on whether Judaism is a religion or a people. Here we're talking about as a people.
Right.
It's not a question of sects. Right? Because remember, the sects in Judaism only develops very late, about 200 years ago.
Right.
So for the Ramchal to sort of say, I don't think that really is the question that he's dealing with here. Now,
The only change in the root system is from Noah on, basically. Everyone has the roots.
no, after Noah.
But the roots was the 1,000 years of the people before Noah, right?
I just gave the year 1000. I don't know how many years that was. You can look it up in the art scroll. It'll give you the ages. I just said 1,000.
All 70 nations start with those roots, right?
All the roots for all humanity start with Adam Arishon. At some point, after Dora Apalga, Hashem says, from this point onwards, we're done.
Means it Dora Palga.
What?
Means it Dora
Here. Bereshit.
But everyone has the same foundation. All the 70 nations have the same foundation.
Dora Palga is Peleg. So it's after you have the following. You have Shem.
Okay.
After Shem you have Arpachshad.
That's
And then, wait, that's his son. Then you have Shelach. And then you have Paleg.
which is what was that?
4. And then the 5th generation is Ever. So that is the generation. Then Ever, after Ever you have Nachor. No, you have Srug, Reu, Srug. You have a few more people. But that's the chronology. You have it on page 53 here. So the flood was around 1655. The dispersion is 1996. So we're talking about that period, 1996 or so, to the creation of the world.
I have a question.
Yeah.
When we were talking back to Adam for just a second, did his level have anything to do with him being in Gan Eden? If you're in Gan Eden, aren't you automatically like... I mean, obviously he sinned, but wouldn't that have something to do with where he was at spiritually? And
Of course, being up there is he was on a high level. Once he
got
dropped.
kicked out.
Yeah.
So then he's in the world just like... So it's...
But he was not like us. Just keep that in mind. He was still much higher than us.
Okay.
Still much higher than us. Yeah.
So you're saying that Adam were the roots to this tree, and then you're saying when the 70 nations came, there were 70 different trees, so they're not related.
Correct.
They're all separate from each other.
Correct. So it seems the Ramchal is saying in the it's a metaphor, right? It's not a. He's saying that you have roots that what do roots do? Actualize that which is potential. And there was a period of human history that human beings were supposed to do that, and there was a cutoff time. Once that cutoff time, then whatever trees that existed, right? Now we start having trees. And he says now you have Abraham as a tree, and you have, other peoples as a tree in the 70 nations.
As branches or as trees? Because at first you said branches.
No, I said tree. From then onwards, right, the tree begins with one person. Like the father of the nation of this is one person. Abraham is the father of one, And then from that they go out. Always when I have a metaphor that doesn't seem like I have a hard time understanding, I just say, okay, what's the idea that he's trying to tell me? So he's trying to explain how, from a Torah perspective, Jews and non-Jews are different. Correct? Okay, fine. So what is he saying? He says there was a period of history that humanity is everybody. We're supposed to actualize their true potential. Some human beings did better, some human beings didn't. At some point, this is it. You were giving X amount of time to work on that. You haven't succeeded. Wherever you reached, that's the level you go on the court, on the basketball court. Yeah, you can't play, you can shoot, you didn't practice too much 3-point. Now the game starts. So we have one player is Abraham, we have other players, right? But we're going to look at Abraham, and from there we're going to learn about other things. So it says, once the gate of the root level is closed, then we shift into the branches. Okay? So what does he mean by that? He says that there are places for all the other branches, or all the other trees, right? All other nations, to uproot themselves from their roots and transplant themselves in the branches of Avraham Avinu. Okay? That is, okay, you may be born in a particular group, that in that group they haven't actualized too much. So you might say, I guess I'm stuck. So says the Ramchal, you're not stuck. You can uproot yourself and plant yourself, become part of the branches of Avraham. How so? He says, because Avraham, what was Avraham known for?
Chesed.
What?
Chesed.
Which was what?
Kindness.
Which was what? What was his act of chesed? What was he doing? What was he doing?
Being like God.
What?
He's being like God.
Okay. But he's known for something very specific.
He uprooted
It's
himself.
Making converts. Geirim. People would come to him, he would teach them about God, he would teach them about the Torah, and they became his people. He would circumcise them and they would be like with him. In the same way, he says, in the same way that all the descendants of Adam get divided into trees, roots, and branches, every tree has main branches, and then smaller branches, and so on and so forth. It's just a metaphor. If you don't like it, you don't have to use it. So he says, Avraham Avinu included 600,000 branches. Why 600,000 branches?
Just the amount of people.
The amount of people that what?
He converted.
Received the Torah.
Oh.
Branches, right? So he says that's how it works. So when they left Egypt, they became a nation.
So when you say they were,
And then we are all, wait. And the Torah was given to those branches of Avraham Avinu. Yes?
when you say they were given the Torah, it's obviously not like only the mitzvot and
the Torah.
How can they be given the Torah about what's written that's happening thousands of years later and all that stuff?
It says that.
Ju-
That
Do you want me to
given-
answer?
Oh, do you want to answer?
Yeah, I would love to.
Okay, you go ahead.
I think I get paid to teach, no? They received the Torah. Everything.
But like how Moses, when he went up,
He
from
knew
Mount
everything.
Sinai, God gave him the Torah B'al Peh, but he didn't have the Torah written up until before he died, right? When he got to
It's a machlokes. Not everybody says that. They received the Torah. You're right that he received also the oral Torah, which is the explanation of every single letter, every single knitch in the Torah. Yes.
So for them receiving the Torah, whatever they have, let's say Pesach, or something that didn't happen yet.
Why? Pesach happened already. They just came back. They just had Pesach. In Har Sinai, they had Pesach.
They did?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm talking about Avraham when they got the Torah, but like I'm
No,
saying,
Avraham Avinu didn't get the Torah in that way.
okay. I thought he just got like the mitzvot.
No.
Was it 600,000 men only? So the men are the only ones with the Jewish souls?
No. He's just giving that idea as an idea. I'm like, oh, so women are out, and children are out, and old people
Like
are.
it was went to be more than 600,000. If it's
So, no, but that's the idea of 600. But if you even look in the Torah, it's more than 600,000. But it's the idea. It's in the idea that Ramchal is saying, like, for the totality of the Jewish people, it's 600,000. But it's more than that. The Torah says it's, I think, 623,000 or 33. But it's sort of an idea, Like you say, have you ever heard people say there are 613 commandments in the Torah? If you actually sit and count, there are lots of different countings, and it depends on what. There's sometimes, say, one mitzvah, but it has lots and lots of little ones. So you could say, no, there's lots more. So, sometimes the numbers are just in order to give you categories so that you know what you're talking about. But it's not that this is it. Okay? And he says, the chesed that the Kadosh Baruch Hu did Eliasaph with the rest of the nations was that he tala dinam. He didn't judge them for not coming over to Abraham, for not continuing to actualize what they could already at this stage, until the giving of the Torah. Up to the giving of the Torah, they could have accepted the Torah. Because we are told by the Gemara, right, that Hashem took the Torah to each nation and said, hey, you want the Torah? And most of them said,
No.
what's in it?
Yeah. Well,
One
then
said
they
yes.
no.
Okay.
They said, what's in it? And they said, well, it's this. They said, not for us. What about this? Not for us. What about this? Not for us. They didn't want it. They didn't want it. So then he says, "Ichzir et Torah al kulam sheikablo." He took it to if they accepted the Torah, then they would have been able to lift themselves up. But since they did not want to, then the door is shut. That's it. So then everybody stays in their own trees. There's the Jewish tree, there's the non-Jewish trees, and that's it. Everybody stays according to the tree in which they're in. So,
Unless they convert.
good. Very smart comment. Very good. No, it's very important. Right? Because somebody would say, you see, so here Ramchal says you can't convert. No, that's not what the Ramchal can mean, because everywhere you've got enough sources in the Gemara and the Torah that tells you about a ger, so obviously not. So, very good.
Like a nation can't convert anymore, whereas before an entire nation could
The
convert.
nations
Yes.
don't exist anymore. They're all mixed though. So it's
What?
after I think it was our first exile, all the nations became mixed. They never returned.
Right.
So we don't have the 70 nations.
Correct.
As they existed
Concept.
then.
Correct. Correct.
Except for intermarried, so it's
Not only intermarried, but there was forced
right. it was
mixture
fun.
by the Assyrians. They had this great plan.
Le goyish
But that-
neshama.
But that goes to agree with the fact that an entire nation can't convert anymore because there aren't any nations
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah,
So it works out. Yeah.
yeah, everything is hunky dory. Okay, let's stop here because the minyan is going to start soon.